Have you ever wanted to learn how to do a quilt-as-you-go method, but just didn't even know where to start? If so, this video is for you. We're gonna make a very easy project, beginner friendly, perfect for anyone just starting out with this technique, and possibly somebody who doesn't quite understand how it all works. This is for you. Today we're gonna be making placemats. We're gonna use the June Tailor Quilt-As-You-Go Quilt by Number Kit. And I have some wonderful fabrics too. Look at these. You can see them. I have them all pre-cut and everything. They're ready to go. And I also want to thank Missouri Star Quilt Company for sending me all of this wonderful stuff so I can bring you this video and show you this technique. So let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about what quilt-as-you-go means. It means exactly how it sounds. You're going to quilt the entire project as you sew it together. So you're going to have the backing, the batting, and then the pieces on top all sandwiched, and when you sew your seams, that's going to quilt the project too. It will make sense as we get started working on this, I promise. These kits are great. They have a ton of different ones. June Tailor, I don't know if she's a real person or not. Is she a real person? I don't know. But June Tailor has a bunch of these kits. You can do tote bags, placemats. I think they even have quilt blocks, all kinds of different projects. This one's a super easy one. As you can see, there are just straight seams, easy peasy. We don't have to worry about bias or anything like that. And it gives you all the instructions inside. All right, so let's open it up and see what we have. In the kit, you get an instruction sheet, the batting pieces, so you can see this. This is all of the 4 placemats that we're gonna make, and there is printed lines on the actual batting. It also gives you the information sheet, oops, that we have here, and tells you exactly what you need for this project. For whatever reason, there's 2 there. And you can see here too, it gives you the fabric requirements. You're also going to need pins, a basting spray. Of course, June Tailor tells you to use their brand, but you can use any brand. A seam roller, which let me get mine. Something like this that you can press the seams, because you don't want the iron to touch your batting, so that it can get tricky there, but I'll walk you through it, I promise, I'll walk you through it. Also, you'll need the fabrics, and again, the fabric requirements are up here on the screen. You can use up to 5 for this project, and then just the general quilting supplies, of course. In the instructions, it suggests that you starch your fabric, and I did that already. I soaked it down with a starch, and I just used this one. You can use any starch that you'd like. I soak it really well, and then I'll put it outside to dry. I usually do this the day before, and I like to have it nice and crisp. The starch fabric is really nice to work with. If you've never done it, give it a try. There's a few things you want to remember. When you go to press it, you can't use steam, because the steam's gonna make the starch go away. It's water soluble starch, so you can't use steam in your iron. That's important. And also just keep in mind that it will shrink up that fabric yardage some, because those fibers will tighten. And that's just important to know, because some people, including myself when I first started, would cut my fabric first and then starch it, but you don't want to do that. You want to do it the other way around. You want to starch your fabric and then cut it. Also, wind a bobbin for this that has a coordinating thread, because we are quilting as you go. You are going to see that thread on the back side of this. And then if you choose to do quilt lines, it'll be easy peasy, because you'll have everything coordinated. And I chose a blue thread for this project. The first step is to cut all of these panels apart. I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you back here for the sewing portion. All 4 of the placemat pieces are cut out. And now we're going to adhere the backing fabric. So I have that all cut out too, to the specific size. And I'm going to adhere it to the back, so the non-printed side of the placemat. I'm gonna lay this right side down, so you can see that the correct side is facing down. I also have a towel. This stuff is water soluble, so you can clean it up pretty easily. And there is a little bit of overspray, which is kind of a pain. For some reason, it makes me feel better laying down a towel. Probably does no good, but it helps, I think, in my head. I'll just go back also with a rag and wash my mat down. So just shake this up. And I use the 505 temporary adhesive for fabric. And just lightly spray it on. And then you take one of your placemats and make sure, again, that the printed side is up. All right, the lines are up. And lay that down. You also want to make sure, which mine is not, that the fabric covers the lines and goes past the lines a little bit. One nice thing about this spray is it is repositionable, so you can pull it up and keep going. You want to make sure it's nice and flat too, just like that. And you can see the back, it's like that, and I made sure you can hold it up to the light and see that it covers all those lines. I'm going to go ahead and adhere the other 4, and then we're going to get to sewing. Now that everything is adhered, I have one of the placemats here with the backing. It's nice and straight. I even trimmed up these edges. One thing I want to mention is we do make this a little oversized, and then we'll go in and trim it up on these trim lines. So make sure when you're cutting out the actual placemats that you leave that margin that's talked about in the instructions. All right, so this is also sometimes called sewing by number because there are numbers on this placemat on the batting. It really works out well because we know piece 1 goes in the center. So I have piece 1 here, and you center this. It should fit almost perfectly on that center piece, that one piece. Now the second piece, number 2, is this white. So it's going to look like this. And I'm going to put this right sides together and line up that line, the printed line on the batting, right with the edge of number 1's fabric, and making sure that it fits in the area between the blue lines on the placemat. I'm just going to turn this, and I'm going to sew a scant 1/4 inch right along that edge. You can put a little bit of glue stick to hold this piece in. You can also pin these, which I'm going to do. I'm just going to pin this so it doesn't shift. Throw a couple pins in there. And I'm pinning through all the layers because we're going to sew through all the layers. Everything's pinned in place. We're ready to sew number 2 onto this, and we're going to use a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I have a scant 1/4 inch foot. If you don't, all you have to do is make your seam allowance just a teeny bit smaller. This is kind of important just because we want this piece when it's flipped to line up with this line. So a good accurate seam allowance is important. If anything, going a slightly smaller would be better than bigger. Here we go. All right, take our pins out, and next we're going to flip this and use our seam roller to press it, or even our fingers. And look at that, it lines up almost perfectly on that next line. So we're going to do number 3 next and do the exact same thing. Line that up. Okay, now at this point I will just press it, but I want to make sure that I don't touch the batting with the iron. Grab my pad. All right, our next step, move my pressing pad here out of the way. Our next step is to add 4, and this one is red for me. You can use whatever colors you'd like. I'm just going to line that up right on the line, which is also the edge of the other fabric. Pin it and sew. Now this one, you can see I got a little distracted, so I am going to go back over that to make sure. There, now I have a 1/4 inch, and that's okay to do. You do quilt as you go, so there are 2 stitch lines over here, but nobody's going to see it because it matches so well. Now we do 5 the exact same way. Lay it on and stitch and press, just with our hands and then with the iron. And that's it. Okay, so this is finished, and you can see, hopefully, here, whoops, drop it. There are quilting lines on the back, so you quilted as you went. Yes, it's quilted as you go technique, whatever you want to call it. And it's done. Well, not really. We have to trim it up. We have to put the binding on, all of that wonderful stuff. But at this point, we can quilt it some more if we want to. And that's what I am going to do. I'm going to go over to my Janome, my trusty old Janome, put my walking foot on and quilt this some more. I'm also going to finish up the other ones, and I'll show you how to trim it up and how to add that binding. So stick with me. We'll keep going. Okay, the quilting is all done. It is so great too. I did a serpentine stitch. I did blue and red, and I just added to the whole thing to enhance it and to hold it all down. I went a little crazy because I really enjoyed the quilting part. Just freehand serpentine. Oh, It's one of my favorite ways to quilt anything, but you can do whatever you want on these. You could even practice free motion quilting if you wanted to, which would be a lot of fun and a great way to enhance this project. There is somebody mowing outside, so please forgive the background noise if you can hear it. I'm just gonna keep on going because the show must go on. You can see that the back then is quilted too. And it's wonderful. Now, the more quilting you do on something, it does get a little distorted and movement and all of that. So you can see how up here, I didn't line up with that line. That's gonna be okay, because when we trim these down, you can trim them down a little bit smaller than the guidelines that they give us. That's okay. As long as they're uniform, if you're using them as a set, that's all that's gonna matter. Now, one thing I ran into as I was quilting these, I noticed that I could see some shadowing from the blue fabric. And again, that happens. It's because I used a light and a dark and maybe didn't have it overlapped really well. Also, you can see the numbers for our sew by numbers through this white fabric. If I were to do it again, I would not use white here. I don't know if this is a water-soluble print on this batting. Maybe it is and it will wash out. Just something to be aware of if you're making any of these projects. All right, so we're gonna square them up now. I'm gonna show you how I do that, and then we'll move on to binding, and I will show you how I do that as well. Okay, so this is completely quilted, and then I also did a basting stitch around the edge to make sure everything stays nice and flat. So we're gonna square this up now. And the thing we wanna worry about is these seam lines. We wanna make sure that these vertical lines are straight, because that's gonna give us the straight look in our placemat. As we quilted, things got a little shifty, so things are a little uneven on the edges. That's okay. So we're gonna lay our ruler down, and what I'm looking for are the lines on my ruler, making sure that these vertical lines are straight, which it looks like right there is nice and straight. Now I'm gonna look at the edge and make sure that I have something to trim away on the edges, so I'm not so far over onto the batting, because we wanna make sure we're in the fabric area. So let me line that up again, and you can see up here, I am gonna have to take some off. That's gonna be okay. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. So I'm gonna start here, cut that, and then I'm gonna move to the other side of my table, hold it, and cut, and then veer off. Pull my fabric away, just trim that off to get it out of our way. And then I'm going to do this one. And now I'm going to line up on that edge. I'm also going to make sure it's straight on these vertical lines. And now I can use my mat if I want to line that up as well. I'm looking at all points of reference. Now we're going to keep going, doing the same thing, lining it up and cutting. Last one. Here it is. It's all finished. Now I have a couple of the other ones cut too, and I'm just gonna line them up to see how well we did. And they're just about the same. Maybe a little bit off. This one is a little bit smaller because this is the smaller one and it's off by maybe 1/4 of an inch. If I want them uniform, I'd want to size down to this particular one, but I'm not gonna worry about it. They are close enough for me. Yeah, they're just a little off, not bad. If they're off this way and you want to trim them down, you're gonna wanna trim a little off each side because you want this distance to be correct. If it's the other way, if they're off this direction, you don't have to worry about it. You can trim off from either side because it's not a symmetrical design, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. It is time to bind these placemats. Oh, I'm so excited. This is gonna be so much fun because this is when they come to life. Well, actually the quilting is when they come to life, but I really love to add the binding too because I love the finished touch of it. Here's the thing though, I don't bind the way a lot of people bind, and I don't bind the way the directions say to bind. The directions tell you to cut strips of fabric that are 2.5 inches by the width of fabric, and for each placemat you'll need 2 strips. However, I like to do single fold binding. I find it to be just less bulky, and I just get more accurate results and more, I don't know, pleasing results in my opinion by doing single fold bindings. So I cut my binding strips 1.25 inch wide. So they're very skinny. You can see them here, I cut them already. To me, it's a nicer finish, especially for small projects, especially for something that's gonna be laying on the table. It's my go-to. Unless I'm making a quilt that I know is going to be used a lot, but even then sometimes I'll only do single fold binding. I know, weird, right? Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do this my way. Next, we're going to add the binding, like I said, and I'm gonna take 2 of these strips and we're gonna put right sides together. So we have the pretty sides facing, and we're gonna do them perpendicular like this. And you know what? I'm gonna lay this on the table so you can see, because it's hard to see with me holding it. So I'm gonna lay one this way and one, this is hard to do because I have a camera right in front of me. All right, one like this. And I'm just gonna overlap them about 1/4 of an inch, just like that. And then my purple thing, here it is. I'm going to sew a line right like this. Just like that. And then when you open it up, it is even-ish. It's a little off there, but that's okay. It's even on this side. So next I'm gonna trim these up. And if I'm being really good, I would open this up and press it, and then trim off my dog ears. There you go. Yeah, it's pretty good. A little notch there, but that's not gonna show. All right, so now is the time to add it to our placemat. So let me grab one of those. Okay, so I put on my 1/4 inch seam foot. Also gonna adjust my needle. We are ready to go. So I'm gonna take one end of my binding, and I'm gonna lay it down, I don't know, about like right here. A lot of people will start this and they'll back stitch. I don't do that just because I usually end up unsewing this, which you'll see as I'm trying to get it joined. That's what I do. So I don't bother to back stitch. I'll lay that right here, right along that edge, and I'm gonna sew 1/4 inch down. If I'm sewing more than 1/4 inch, I need to adjust that at the corner, which I'll show you. So let's get started. All right, so we're coming to the corner, and before I get to the corner, I'm gonna lay, let me use a ruler. I was gonna use that, but you can see it better probably on a ruler. I'm gonna lay a ruler, and I'm gonna line that 1/4 inch line up, and I'm gonna mark it. And I'm just gonna use a pen. Nobody's gonna see it, especially since it's a blue pen on blue fabric. If you're worried about it, you can always use disappearing ink or chalk or something like that. Now I'm gonna sew to that point, and I'm gonna make sure my needle goes into that line. If you are using a wider seam allowance, this is going to match that. So if you're using, say, a 1/2 inch, you're going to measure a 1/2 inch from the corner. And I'm gonna take it real slow, and I am in that line. Then I'm gonna pivot and sew a right angle, not a quarter, a right angle off. It's getting late. All right, and it looks like this. Next, I'm going to wrap a package. So I am going to fold this back on itself so it looks like a gift. And I'll just finger press it. Then I'll flip this way and finger press it. And I want this to line up on this edge here, which it is. It's pretty good. And then I take a clip, I stick it in right there. And I put it off to the side, like closer to the edge that I folded in, because I want it to be able to go under the presser foot. All right, and then I turn. And that's not quite right. I'm gonna adjust that a little bit. You get pretty good at it, and you get pretty good at knowing what you can get away with and what is kind of wrong and gonna give you more of a headache later on. Which really, I mean, the rules about quilting sometimes are all about that. What's gonna give you a headache later on? If you can call them rules, but you can make a quilt any way you want. All right, now I'm gonna start sewing right at that edge. I don't backstitch, some people do, I don't. And then I'm gonna go down and do the same thing with the next corner. So I'm at the next corner, I'm gonna measure and mark it, and I'll speed the rest of it up for you. Okay, now we're coming to the other end, and I'm going to show you how to join them. And also a little bit of ways down, so I'm away from that corner, like right here. I don't backstitch here either. All right, So now we're going to join these. And I already know I need to open this up a little bit because I got too close, which I always do, so I should know better. I'm just going to unsew that. And if that were backstitched, I could still unsew it, but makes it easier because I know myself. Now let's join. Yay! So I'm going to pick a spot, I don't know, right here, and I'm going to put a pin in perpendicular. Now there are tons of ways to join binding. None of them are wrong. Do it however you want to do it. However you want to bind. It's your quilt. Nobody is going to come at you. And if they do, they're not your friend. This is the way I do it. I take half of this size, which this is 1 1/4 inch. So half of that is 5/8. And I'm gonna line up on that metal part of the pin. I'm gonna line that line up and I'm gonna draw a line. And this is the part I'm gonna cut off. And I'm gonna move that out of the way. Take the other side and measure, line that up, and draw a line, and trim that off. Okay, there it is. Look at that. Now the next step, it can be kind of tricky. The first thing we're gonna do, we remove that pin, and I'm gonna fold this kind of like an accordion and put a big clip in there. You could use a clothespin, whatever you like. You just want some slack over here as we join these. So take your one end, the right side, and lay it down like that. Then take your other end, oh, it just wants to be unruly. And you're gonna lay it right on top like that, right sides together, just like that. I'm gonna put a pin in there. The way I'm gonna sew, that's gonna be my reminder. So I know I'm gonna sew from that corner to that corner, just like that pin. And then I'm going to put a bunch of other pins. You know, sometimes 2 will do it, sometimes 3, 4, just depends. Not pretty, but it works. And I put them in like this. And that stabilizes everything. I'm gonna take that center pin out and go to the machine. I have to change out my foot here to my regular foot. All right, now I'm going to sew from that point to this point, and I'm gonna take the pins out as I go. I'm gonna take my time. And I'm gonna peek in there and see where that point is because I wanna make sure I come out where that point is. And I did. Let's remove our clip. Before I cut anything or do anything else, I'm gonna check this, and it is good. And then I'm going to trim this off. And if I were being really great, I would press this open, but feeling a little lazy. All right, I'm gonna put my 1/4 inch foot back on, move my needle position, and now I'm just going to sew. And now it is done. Oh my goodness, look what I did. I sewed a piece of scrap in there. Gotta open that up, fix that. This is a great opportunity to show you how to use a seam ripper or unsewer, like I call it. Just get it started, and then if you flip it over, you see that ball? That can go right into your fabric, and it won't cut your fabric. So that hole you just made, and you can just run it right along that to open that up. And that way it won't cut the fabric. I'll pull that little piece out. Ah! All right, and re-sew this. Yay! Look at that. So now I would take this to the iron and just push these out real nice. And once you do that, you can fold this in like this and just hand stitch right along that edge to hold it in. When you do the corners, they fold in beautifully. Usually I do this as I sew it. You know what? Let me just try to mock it up here. You can see that you get a beautiful miter. Look at that. It's perfect. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and hand sew these down and finish up the rest of these and meet you back here with the finished placemats. Yay! They're all done. Look at these. Oh my goodness. Look at how pretty they are. Here, I'll hold one up so you can see. Look at that. Oh, here's another one. I can keep going and going and going. This has been so much fun. I really wasn't sure if I was gonna like these or not. I'm not a placemat type of gal. I really wanna use these. They're awesome. There's the corner, so you can see how nicely that got mitered. Also, I have a video on how to do like 3 different ways of doing binding, if you want to check that out. It is a St. Patrick's Day video, but you can use any fabrics you want to make the projects, or even just skip ahead to the chapter that is on binding. I think there's 3 or 4 different ways to bind quilts or projects or whatever. And I also had enough fabric left over to make one of these guys. And I also have a video on this if you've never made one. I'll put that here at the end too. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you take some time to sew, and I will see you real soon. Bye.